Welcome back. In this lecture, we will launch our first EC2 instance, a virtual server, and we will use the AWS Management Console to launch the EC2 instance. We will look into various parameters when launching EC2 instances at a very high level. As you can see, there are many, but we will look into the main ones used a lot. Okay? Then we will launch a web server directly on the EC2 instance by passing a few lines of code to the EC2 instance. And that piece of code is called EC2 user data. You will see it. Finally, we will learn how to start, stop, and terminate the EC2 instance. Okay? That being said, let's get started and launch our first EC2 instance. For that, first sign into the AWS Management Console. I'm signed in. And now let's look for EC2. Click here. Now I'm at the EC2 dashboard. Okay? If you click here on the instances, no instances are running. What we'll do now is click on Launch Instances. Okay? Here, I need to provide name and tag. Let's name it EC2 Tutorial, okay? And if you want, you can also give an additional tag here, though you don't have to. Just a name is sufficient. Next, we need to select a base image. Okay? This will be the operating system of the launched EC2 instance. As you can see, here is the full list of images. Okay? You can browse here to see various AMIs, but for our purpose, the Amazon Linux AMI image is fine. As you can see here, there is a full list of images you can choose from. But here we also have the option to search for more AMIs. So if you click here, you can search for various AMIs. Okay? For example, Marketplace AMIs and Community AMIs, right? That's where you will learn all these things later on, right? You should be able to create your own AMI and upload it on AWS, right? But for this demo purpose, AMI from the Quick Start option is fine because this is eligible for a free tier. For this demo, I will choose this Linux AMI image, okay? Because this is a free tier eligible, 64-bit architecture is fine, and everything else is very much okay. Now we need to choose the instance type. Instance types will differ based on the number of CPUs, the amount of memory they have, and how much they cost. That being said, as you can see, the T2 Micro is selected, and this one is free tier eligible. So if we launch one of the T2 Micro instances, it will be free to launch for an entire month if we just let it run. As part of the AWS free tier, you can get started with EC2 for free. This includes 750 hours of Linux and Windows T2 Micro instances, T3 Micro for the regions in which T2 Micro is unavailable, each month for 1 year. So, to stay within the free tier, it is recommended to use EC2 Micro instances. Okay? So, this is what we are using here. So here, if you scroll down, you can see a bunch of instance types here, right? These are various instance types. As I said, these instance types vary based on the number of CPUs and memory and cost. Okay, now next is that key pair. So this is fine. So next is the key pair. So the key pair you use to connect to your EC2 instances, okay? This is required if you use SSH to access your instance, and we'll use SSH in this demo. That's the reason I will be creating a key pair. Okay? Right now, if you click here, there is no key pair, so you can launch instances without having a key pair. But since I will be using SSH, let's create a new key pair, okay? And give this key pair name. Let me give this name EC2 key pair. Okay, and here the key pair type RSA is fine. This is good. For the private key file format, you can use the .pem format if you have a Mac, Linux, or Windows 10. But if you have a Windows version less than 10, say, for example, 7 or less, you can directly use this option because you can then use it with PuTTY. It is used to do SSH on Windows. So remember, anything with less than Windows 10, just PPK, or else PEM is okay. So let's click here and create a new key pair, and next is now network settings. Here I will not change anything. My instance will get a public IP address, and then I will use the public IP address to connect this instance. A security group will be attached to this instance, which will control the traffic to and from this instance. So, we need to add rules that will be our security group for this instance. Okay? And we can define multiple rules in that security group. So this one is the first one here, which allows traffic from anywhere. Okay? Next, we want to allow HTTP traffic from the internet. For this, let's check this box, because that will allow HTTP traffic from the internet. Okay? And HTTP is fine. Let it be as it is, because this demo server will only use HTTP, okay? Not HTTPS. For the storage, the 8 gig option is fine because this is just a demo. And if you want, you can add another volume, okay? I will remove it. 8 gig is fine. For advanced details, we can learn it later. Just scroll down. Scroll down. The interesting is the user data section. This is where we pass a script. We pass some commands to the EC2 instance to execute when this instance launches the very first time, okay? So I'll copy and paste a few lines of command here for this instance, and I will explain what this is. So these are 4 lines here. The first one is telling that this is a bash script, okay? This installs the HTTP server, and this line creates an index.html page and adds 1 line. Hello world, right? This is the H1 tag. You already know. And this line will start HTTP daemon, okay? So essentially, this line will start the web server. This part is okay. So now we are happy with all this. Let's click here and launch the instance. As you can see, my instance is running, and I want to show you a few things right now. Okay? The first one is that instance name. This is the EC2 tutorial. And there is an instance ID, which is just a unique identifier. Then, here's the public IP address associated with this EC2 instance. Okay? Then, the private IP address, which is associated with this EC2 instance, is used. Okay? The private IP address is essentially used internally when, for example, in this instance, communicating on the AWS private network. Also, we get some information. For example, we have here public DNS corresponding to public IP address and private DNS. Okay? If we scroll down further, we can see that this is the AMI ID that was used. This is the AMI name, launch time, and key pair we used to launch this instance, right? So there are a lot of details we can find about this instance here, right? If we go on security, we can see that this is the security group that launched Wizard1, right? Which was used to launch this instance. And right now, there are 2 rules associated with this security group. The first one is port 80. So port 80 is opened on this EC2 instance, which means anyone can connect on port 80, and then port 22, an SSH port, is also opened. So 0.0.0.0 means port 80 can be connected from anywhere. Similarly, port 22 on this machine can be connected from anywhere. Of course, I will not have port 22 open to be connected from anywhere, but this is just for the demo I'm showing here. Similarly, the outbound rule says that it allows all communication outwards, which allows the instance to access the internet. Okay? Right now, what is happening is that, again, the same thing here. 0.0.0.0 means all traffic from this instance is allowed to go outside. This means this machine can access the internet. Okay? For storage, we have attached 1 gig volume here. Now let's see our web server is running. So, let's see how our web server looks. We have 2 options. We can just click here, open the address, or copy this IP address and paste that into the browser, right? So let's first click here and see what we get. The important thing is that we need to use HTTP, not HTTPS. The browser defaults to HTTPS, but since we have only opened port 80, let me take the S out. We got the output. Hello world. We passed that in the user data script when we launched this instance, right? Another way is if I copy this and say, for example, I paste here and enter here. Same thing. Right? I got the same output. So we saw that our web server is running. That's great. Now, let's explore a few options. We have an EC2 instance that is running. Now let's see how we can stop this instance. Okay? Let's go and stop this instance. This instance is, oh, how can we know that our instance is stopped? So if I go here and if I say refresh right now, it's still coming. It is still stopping. So let's this guy be stopped. Okay. So right now it's not showing and running, so it is stopped. So if I refresh here, right, the site is not reachable. it means the server is stopped, right? EC2 instance is stopped. So what we will do is I'll come here again. I'll just go here and ignore all this because these are all terminated instances. So this is the instance that is stopping. This is stopping. That's okay. So I can start this instance again and restart it. For this instance, I will click here. The instance and setting that failed to install is not in state, which can be started. So let's go here again to the dashboard. This is the instance we are trying to start. So let it stop. Once it is stopped, then we will go and start it again. It is failing, so let it stop. As you can see now, the instance is stopped. If I click here and say, okay, start it. Now it is in a pending state, and then it will move to a running state. Okay. And right now it is still in a pending state. Ignore this terminated one because I was practicing earlier. It is still in a pending state. But if I go and click here now, it is running. Okay. If I come here and click on refresh, now we have the output. Now, the next thing is, what will we do? Right now, port 80 is open. Let me do one thing. This is the security group. Let me take out this security port 80. I'll click on the edit inbound rule, and what I'll do, I'll take out this HTTP port. Okay? Let me take it out. Save the rule, okay? Now, if I return here, see what we get here. Okay, so it is spinning. It is spinning, right? It is spinning. So the idea here is that whenever you launch a web server and are testing something like this, for example, if you are testing, and this wheel is spinning, spinning and spinning, it means there is a high possibility something is wrong with the security group, right? Port 80 is closed. Port 80 is not open. That is why this website is not accessible, right? It keeps on spinning. What will we do? Let's go here and add that port 80 back again. Let me add a rule here. I can select HTTP here. Okay? This guy port 80, and let's open it from anywhere, right? Save rule. Okay, so now we're back. If we come here, we got the output, hello world, right? We got it back. This is the whole idea of the security group. Using a security group, we can control inbound and outbound rules. Okay? That was one thing. The other thing I also wanted to show you is that, let me stop again. Let me stop this guy. This is the public IP address. Okay? This 18.254.192.182. This is stop it. Okay? What I wanted to show you is that when we restart, there is a high possibility that the public IP address might be changed. Okay? So let's see what happens. Let's stop, and then I will restart it again. And to see if the public IP address changes. Okay, go here. What happens? Okay, this is not accessible. This has been stopping, but I think it still has not stopped fully. So let's wait a few seconds. Okay, now it is stopped. If I come here to dashboard and this guy, which is that? So we are working on this guy's EC2 tutorial. Okay, let's say the public IP address. It is gone, right? The private IP is here. Let's restart it again and start the instance. Come here. Earlier, the public IP address was 18.254.192.182. But now, if you notice, the public IP address has changed for this instance. The idea is that when you stop the instance and restart it, you will get a different IP address. However, the private IP address will not change when you stop and start an EC2 instance. Okay? I think we've covered many important aspects related to launching an EC2 instance in this lecture. We have launched our first EC2 instance, and we launched our first web server in the cloud. We learned how to stop and start an EC2 instance, right? One more thing, let's learn how to terminate an EC2 instance. Let's terminate it, click here, and it will be terminated.